I record.
Okay.
Hi, this is Arden June, Delicacies of Society, and we are chatting with Barbara. Hi, Barbara. How you doing?
Hi, June. How are you?
I am well. I am well, and I'm excited to talk to you today.
Oh, I'm excited to share some time with you. I'm
Good,
excited
good,
about
good.
what you're doing. It's awesome.
We're doing good stuff. We're going doing good
Yeah.
stuff, and I'm so super excited because I know you are like a gem of information. And so I can't wait to like get at it, right? I feel like I'm chomping at the bit. Tell us a little bit about who you are so that folks know that, you are awesome in what you do. And, let's talk about, mental health and mental awareness and how it fits into this place called art.
Yes. Well, thank you, June. I've had the awesome privilege, first of all, is working as a nurse for over 35 years, and I've met some interesting patients that I often say patients has taught me more than any textbook could teach me, just by doing assessments and talking with patients. And many times when patients was hurting at their worst. And so just being there and understanding some of what they were dealing with has given me some rich knowledge. And over the years, I have gravitated, I've worked in all areas of nursing, but I ended my career coordinating psychiatric services. So I've had about 20 years of working in different areas of mental illness in the hospital setting, as well as advocating for those that needed mental health services. So I've had a rich experience, and I call it rich because I've been able to learn so much from people and understand their struggle and try to help meet them at their lowest. And unfortunately, but it's meeting them at their lowest. So
Yeah.
it's been a it's been a good experience, and it's kind of landed me to where I am today. And I continue to do that with my biblical counseling experience and also working with some individuals that I supply services to. So
That's terrific.
Mm.
You're based where?
I'm in Southfield, Michigan.
In Southfield, Michigan. Okay. So tell me something. So I know you have a book that you wrote, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
tell me a little bit about the book, the title, and what it is that the book contains.
Well, it's called Every Beat of My Heart. And Every Beat of My Heart really deals with the emotional, the spiritual, and issues of the heart, issues of life. And this book was actually birthed about 35 years before I wrote it because I was teaching a basic EKG class and I was talking about the physiology of the heart, how the heart is made up and how it gets its blood supply.
Mm,
Then, as I was preparing for the class, God showed me and correlated that just how the blood vessels can be blocked with plaque, they can also be blocked spiritually with anger, unforgiveness, resentment. And so I kind of kept that for years. But then after my husband died of a massive heart attack,
ooh,
very thing that I had in my heart carried for years, God said it was time to write. And so I wrote the book, Every Beat of My Heart. And my husband is intertwined all through the book in terms of our life experiences. And I share the story of finding him not breathing. And of course, he did make it. But I believe it was what God wanted me to do. And it has helped so many people deal with their issues that causes emotional and spiritual pain. And
mm,
so I provide prescriptions for the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual issues of the heart in the book.
wow, that's heavy.
Yes. And
That's
so,
really heavy, but
I,
that's
yeah,
almost, well, not even almost. It's serendipitous, really.
yeah, it was a God thing. And
Yeah.
I'm glad I waited because after I shared it with some people, I said, I'm going to write this book one day and I'm going to talk about the physical and spirit. And then God just, he wouldn't let me do it. And so it was in his timing that I wrote it after my husband died,
Wow.
very thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's heavy. Tell me
Mhm.
something. Um, you talk about, anger and you talk about unforgiveness, right? And we know that there's a correlation between mental health and art. But we also know that, there's some root issues around mental wellness. So, for you to be mentally well, if you are struggling with some mental illness issues, talk a little bit about that, because I think, I see there's an issue that a lot of people who are creative deal with in terms of mental health. But I know across the board, mental illness is vast. So for some of us who are artists and who deal with it versus some of us who may not necessarily be creative, but still have some issues around mental illness, amplify that a little bit for us, because I don't think people fully understand what mental illness always is.
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to just congratulate you. Just that theme, Art in June, and the whole concept about creating art and helping individuals in that area, I think is just awesome.
Thank you.
When it comes to mental illness and dealing with mental illness, first of all, many people will not, first of all, they don't know. They don't understand it. They don't know what's happening with the mind. The next thing is that they're kind of afraid. They're being stigmatized. They want to be normal and function, but they have trouble doing that because they have the mental illness. And many times they are ashamed to get help, don't know how to get help, don't know who to turn to or what to turn to. And I've met so many people that came into the hospital with a physical problem, but it was precipitated by an emotional problem. So, what do I mean by that? Stress and anger and all of that releases endorphins in our bodies that causes some physical changes in our bodies. And so we end up with ulcers, we end up with headaches, we end up with chest pain that may not have anything to do with the heart, but you're so stressed out and all of what's going on with you physically. And a lot of people are angry and they don't even know that they're angry.
Mm, mm,
They don't attribute their problems to anger. There are so many people that have been hurt in their past and it's unforgiveness. They don't know how to forgive. And there's a concept that I've always shared that, I used to hear people say, you just need to forgive yourself. You just need, and I got so tired of hearing that. So I did a little study on that. Why is it people can't forgive themselves? First of all, they often can't forgive. They don't understand that I can just release it and walk in the forgiveness that's already been provided for me. And so they get stuck. And that's why I am so passionate about helping people to be all that they can be. And they cannot do that holding on to anger, holding on to unforgiveness, holding on to past hurts that they drag along in every relationship, that they drag along this baggage in every
mm,
life situation. And they cannot be fully happy or experienced the joy in their lives that's due to them. And so it's just a passion of mine because I've worked with, and I don't know, I think it's a God thing, but a lot of people, when I would go and visit in my community nursing, visit the group homes, I go to see the people, but I end up talking to the staff and their issues. And I think a lot of people just feel comfortable in sharing their hurts and their pain. And I've dealt with that all of my life. And so I just feel like, well, I have a responsibility. If someone shares something with me, I have a responsibility to see what I can do. Not that I'm perfect or have it all together, because I've learned so much, but I hate to see people hurting if
mm.
there can be help for them. And and so if someone shares something with you, I just feel like it's an obligation of mine to work and just say, well, let's see what we can do about that
Yeah,
and get to the root cause, June. We don't know how to get to the root of the problem. And then when
got
we
it.
get there, what do I do with the problem? So it's just, and it causes people not to function well in their jobs. It causes people not to be able to get along with anyone. It causes people in relationships. They don't have good relationships. And they go from one relationship or one situation to the next with the same baggage.
Yeah, yeah. And
You got,
they never heal.
they never heal.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and the reason I'm so passionate about unforgiveness because so many people, 1 in 4 people have problems with unforgiveness.
One in
Five,
four.
1 in 4.
Wow.
And one in four in fact, the data says 1 in 4 Christians have problems with unforgiveness.
Oh, do talk about that.
And so I get a lot of my research from Bonner, BARNA.org. It's a Christian research website, and they do different research on different situations, and it's astounding some of the research that's there.
Mm,
It's awesome. And 95% of people that go for counseling, the root cause many times is unforgiveness and anger,
okay.
not dealing with it.
Not
And,
dealing with it. Okay.
and unforgiveness is probably at the top. And unforgiveness is classified in some medical books, June, as a disease.
Okay. I can believe that. That makes
And
sense.
and there is an institute, and I don't have it in front of me, where they started treating the unforgiveness and they got better physically.
Okay. That totally makes sense.
Because when we don't deal with our issues, it causes stress.
Yes.
We know a little bit of stress is helpful to get stuff done and to move on from one situation to the next. But the chronic stress, you're constantly under stress, constantly. It releases those endorphins and cortisol in the body, which changes us physiologically.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Yeah.
it causes problems, that we don't really need to have in
Yeah.
our bodies physically.
Yeah.
So we resolve that. I just think people should live the best life, live the life that God had designed for them to live. And He did not design for us to live in pain and, angry, unforgiveness, resentment. He didn't, that's not His perfect design for us.
Well, it's like you could be mad at a family member. You could be mad at them for 20 years. You don't even remember why you're mad at them. You just know you're mad at them.
Just mad. Forgot all about it, but I'm just, I don't like her.
Exactly. Or they've died. That person might have died. And you don't even remember exactly what made you mad and what made you guys have a fallout, but you're still mad and that person has gone on and you're stuck with that. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
just think that's so interesting.
And the forgiveness is not for that person, it's for
It's
you.
for you. Yeah. Yeah.
So I can feel better. So I can be released of
Mm,
all this baggage that I'm carrying around. So I can be
absolutely.
free and I can be all that God has designed for me to be.
So I was going to ask you, what are you amazingly good at? But I kind of feel like I know the answer. I kind of feel like, you being able to kind of do the digging, the unearthing of, this whole issue around mental health is really an interesting conversation and a concept. That's the reason why I even wanted to do this, because when people talk about, and let's just say in our community, right, in the Black or brown communities, when
Mhm.
people is talking about mental health, it's a stigma attached to it. Even though sometimes in some communities they say it's stigma free. We know within our culture, amidst our cultures, there are individuals who will definitely say, "Oh, she's crazy. She's cuckoo,"
Mhm.
and you got to
Mhm.
watch her. But nobody really kind of stops to really examine what that really means, how that shows up. So, I kind of feel like, you've been able to really identify some things that I don't think we think about in the same way, right?
Mhm.
So I think I can say that there's some things that you're amazingly good at as we're having this conversation. What do you say?
I think I'm good at, because I've done it so much with patients, I'm good at diffusing complex behaviors,
Okay, makes sense.
kind of seeing through what's really going on and being able to recommend or assist in directing help for that person.
Got it.
And that's just not in the hospital or in any setting that I'm in. That's even in the church. There's even in the community. Um, because a lot of people do share with me and they feel comfortable with, I'll get a phone call. And sometimes people just want to vent, just hear me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes they want to make that step to get some help, but not ready to dig in too deep. And it may take the third or the fourth conversation. And I will, are you ready? Are you willing
Yeah.
to do the work?
Yeah.
You really want to, because if they're not ready, it's no point in you wasting
Yeah.
your time or their time.
It's not gonna happen.
So the question usually comes up, well, what are you ready to do about that? They're
Okay.
really good at telling you all, you listen. Are you ready to dig a little deeper? Are you ready to make a change? And
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
usually what it ends up being. Some change is needed.
And I think that that's kind of where you start, right? That's where you
Mhm.
start to kind of be able to create some sense of freedom or liberation, if you will.
Right.
Um, but you have a really interesting concept, or you talk about an interesting concept, Cairo.
Kairos. Hmm.
So talk a little bit about that, because I think some people may have heard that, but I'm sure there's a lot of people who don't. So talk a little bit about that
Yeah.
and talk about how that, plays into the whole mental space.
Well, Kairos is a term that I came across. It's not a new term. The
Right.
Greeks have two words for time, and one is chronos and one is kairos. And when I was doing my thesis in seminary, I came across it and I read about it. I thought, this is just fascinating. But kairos is God's appointed time, that time in your life where He gets your attention for you to do something significant or to make a change in your life or to get your attention for what He wants you to do. And sometimes we're so busy in life doing our own thing, and sometimes going in a direction that He may not have designed for us to go, and we miss the opportunity. And we don't know if God is going to bring that back around or not, but we don't want to miss God in our lives. Just like you feel at this point, this is what God wants you to
Right.
do. You heard Him, He got your attention,
Yeah.
and you took action on it. That's Kairos, God's appointed time for your life. Him
Yeah.
getting your attention, you're responding to Him, and the response to Him will make a magnificent change in your life as well as someone else's life. Because really, it's not all about us.
Right.
It
Right.
really isn't about us.
Right. There's a bigger
So,
picture here.
and yes, and from that point on, I wanted to make sure that I was in God's moment. I want to make sure that I'm living a karatically life. Make sure that in my old age,
You're
that
not
I
old.
don't die that I don't die
Wise.
missing God's purpose for my life.
So let's talk about that, right? Because
Mhm.
like karatically, as we're talking about that, you told me a story about how you actually came to write the book, right? So, I feel that that's the same thing, right?
Absolutely.
So talk a little bit about that, because then I also want to talk to you about the process that you went through to write the book.
Yeah. I'm glad I listened to God. He just wouldn't let me get started. Every now and then, my brother would tell me, because he wrote one chapter with me. When are you going to write that book? When are you going to write that book? But you sometimes you just know in your gut. I didn't feel it.
I hear you.
And the way God works with me is that He'll give me a peace about something. But if it's not right, I don't have a peace about it. I'm restless. It don't feel right. Don't look
Yep,
right. And so, yeah, I didn't even think about that, June. Yeah, that was a Kairos moment that He said, now it's time to write. I
that's right.
gave you the concept in Texas many years ago, and now this is the moment. He says it's time to write. So that
Mm,
was the Kairos moment in my life. And
yeah,
he told me to write the book.
yeah.
And every chapter starts with the heartbeat of life, the heartbeat of trials and suffering, the heartbeat of prayer. It's all about the heartbeat. And we have to have another conversation about the heart, because the heart is so fascinating. The physical pumping heart is so fascinating, but the spiritual heart is even more fascinating because it has so many, it's so complex and it's so different from any other organ in our body.
Mm,
So I did a lot of research about the heart. And I have a chapter in the book, The Heartbeat of Emotional Pain, when you can actually die from a grieving heart. You can actually die. So
really.
yes, yes.
So Let's talk
physically die.
physically die.
Yeah,
I,
from a
I
hurt.
actually could believe that though. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Or it's probably sometimes when people say, they died of a broken heart type of thing,
Mm,
maybe. But what I always find fascinating about the heart is it's a space that actually you tap into in terms of your intuition, right?
mm-hmm.
Right, even if whether you think it there's a connection or not, sometimes you when you feel something, or when you're in the midst of something happening, the first kind of place you begin to feel some sort of emotion kind of comes from the heart, right? But also your intuition really kind of helps you to flesh some things out, right? Should I do this? Should I not do this? But the other thing I wanted to ask you about is what I find fascinating is that when you look at the heart monitor, right? And you look at how the heart goes up and down, right? It's kind of, symbiotic in terms of how life is, right? The journey of life,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? When you're high up, know that when you're coming down, something you might have a challenge. How do you come down, and how do you prepare to go up again? You can't stay down.
That's fascinating. Now, I watched a lot of monitors in my life. I wrote about, and I was going to do a second book and talk about that QRS complex and
Uh-huh.
T wave and equate that to life. And
Yeah.
that's awesome.
So I think that's interesting. So as you were writing the book, um, what kind of challenges emotionally did you have? Did any of that deal with, because you're a writer, right? And you're a teacher and a counselor, right? A healer. How did you begin to deal with some of that in your creative process, right? We know that as a writer, and you know this too, we might have writer's block. But if we're
Mhm.
having some other challenges along with writer's block, how are you dealing with that when you're in the midst of that?
Sometimes you have to just stop and put it aside and deal with those feelings so that you can write it in a cohesive and meaningful way.
Got it.
And there were times when the emotion came up, the chapter that I talk about finding my husband not breathing and not being able to do CPR effectively because he was in the bed and I had to get him to the floor. Not being able to be there for him like I was for so many patients that I worked with
Mm,
for years, working through all those emotions. And sometimes I would have to just lay it aside. And in laying it aside, June, there were times when God would then just kind of fill me with what He wanted me to write and what He wanted me to share. And there were times I was very transparent in the book. And I talked about my own issues of life, the challenges I had in life. And I was very transparent when my first husband cheated on me.
ooh,
And I was a good wife. I was a good mother. I was a good nurse. I took care of my home. I took care of my children. Uh, why would he feel the need to have someone else? But I had to learn it wasn't my issue, it
that's
was his
right.
issue.
Yeah.
But at that young age, in my late 20s, I couldn't really see that. I could only focus on what am I doing wrong. And I dealt with my anger and I shared my unforgiveness. That's why I can speak about unforgiveness in the way I have, because I've dealt with unforgiveness in a period of time in my life. And my dad said, are you going to make every man suffer for the one man that did you wrong? And
Mm.
it kind of just snapped me out of because my mother had passed away and my dad, I would be so angry and I'd be running my mouth with him and he would just look at me like, when is she going to get over it? But the process of pain, I'm going to do another master class talking about past hurts. The process of pain is different with different people. And so my process might not be your process.
Mm-hmm.
But if we really want to be healed, we will sit down and look at ourselves and do the work. And that is very hard for some people to do. Sounds easy, but to look at yourself and be honest sometimes is not easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is not easy.
Yeah. That's peeling away. That's layers on an onion, and that's peeling stuff away. And some of that stuff is not stuff that you really want to deal with. So yes, I agree with you on that.
And so
Um,
let me
yeah, that's
digress.
tough.
Let me digress a little bit. When I first got excited about Kairos and I wrote the Kairos life plan and I started with those steps. I think it's about 6 or 7 of them. But the lady that I was, she's been coaching me. She said, Barbara, I don't think people can relate to that. I don't think that that should be your first course because people are not ready for that. And I had a Facebook page and people don't understand it. And sometimes people want to read it real quick, get the message and move on. And it takes a little digging and
Yeah,
introspection.
yeah,
And so I'm gonna do
yeah.
it one day, but it's in his timing.
No, but you know what, too, though, if you are not someone that has a Christian base in terms of your faith, you may not necessarily accept it.
That's true.
You
That's
know, that's the other part of that, right? Because everybody's not a Christian. So if you don't have that kind of um faith in terms of how you worship, if you worship at all, some people may not worship
yeah,
at all
yeah, that's
and may
true.
totally dismiss that. But you know, I think the universe is a very interesting thing, right? In terms of the concept of how we're made up,
Hmm.
and you know, the fact that we're very much like nature in more ways than we want to really deal with. You know, when you're talking about the heart, when you're talking about veins in our bodies, and you look at the leaves on the tree and the veins on the leaves, all of those things kind of come together. That's not accidental.
You know, there's a book, June. There's a book called The Garden Within. I have it right here. I haven't had a chance to read it. She equates that with
Yeah,
yeah, Dr. Anita Phillips is in,
yeah,
and she's done that. And we're more like a plant. It's just
absolutely. But you
amazing.
absolutely. But you
And
know, that's the reason why they say you should hug trees to get you to make you more grounded.
you
You
should
know,
what?
when you're outdoors,
Hmm.
hug a tree.
Oh, wow.
It's
Okay.
supposed to make you more grounded in terms of
Mm.
your metaphysics,
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
metaphysical parts of your body, you know. They don't people don't tell you that, but I read that someplace, and I was like, oh, look at your fingerprint and look at a tree, the stump of a tree, and you'll see
Wow.
that there's some commonality in between the two.
Mm.
You know, when they cut a tree down and you look at the actual stump.
That's I've seen those
Mm-hmm.
that
Match it
pattern.
up to a fingerprint, and there's some
Yeah.
similarities in what a fingerprint looks like. So, you know, I mean, there's a reason why we feel things. There's a reason why when it rains, you know, if you have arthritis or whatever, you feel pain in your body.
Yep.
That is not accidental, right? There's a reason why women, and happy International Women's Day, by the way.
Oh, absolutely. Thank
Right.
you.
But there's a
Mm.
reason why women they can both have their menstruation at different times. But if they spend enough time together, everybody menstruate on the same cycle.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. The energy is real.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So, you know, I wanted to talk to you because I just feel that, you know, as an artist, as a creative, you know, there are things that we go through in our own personal lives, and when we actually are able to share that information, you know, what your end product is always the beautiful thing, right? It's the thing that people see, but nobody really knows the challenges that you
Whew,
go through to actually put it together. And so I really wanted to be able to showcase that on a few different levels. We've talked about a lot today.
a lot.
You
Yes.
know, we've talked about a lot, but I think it's so interesting. You know, I could keep talking to you forever because we have some really, this is just like a nugget. You know, this is just like a nugget of stuff, but there's like so much interesting things that's happening to our minds and how we see the world and how we're distracted and how we actually get to create still in those spaces when we're in our darkest moments
Yeah.
or most challenging moments.
You know, my next thing, I just want people to start learning their bodies and listening to their bodies.
Okay.
Um, you know, the doctor only can treat based on what you tell him, how you tell him. And some people, I know my dad, he was, I'll give him a little credit. He was I think he's probably about, he was in his 90s when he would say, I just feel crazy in the head, but he was getting early dementia.
Wow.
And I remember just certain patients telling me little thing, just a little something you thought was small, but you put it all together, it helped with the diagnosis. And when people
Yeah.
are honest with what they feel, and it makes it difficult for the doctor to really come to a good way of treating them, or a good treatment plan, or a good diagnosis. And sometimes we just don't know enough about our bodies. We live in this body. We should
Mm-hmm.
know it.
Mm-hmm.
We walk around in it all day. We should at least listen to it. And there's a whole thing about listening to the heart as well, but I don't want to get into that because I'm still studying on that. Because the heart has its own nervous system, and
Mm.
it is so fascinating because you got this little tissue in the embryo. What makes the heart start beating?
Right.
We know that God got those little fibers, and there's an electrical concept to the
That's
to the
correct.
heart.
That's correct.
It has electricity flowing through it. I mean,
This,
the body is so
it
fascinating.
is.
And we
It
won't
is.
listen, and I tell people, you won't even listen to your bodies.
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah.
feel? Tell me what
Yeah.
you feel. And
Absolutely.
no matter how ugly it is, tell me what you feel,
Yeah.
because it's important.
You're right.
That
And
piece is important.
without the proper functioning of our minds, if this brain is dead, the rest of our body no longer functions.
We are
That's why this is so important.
Yeah, God made us mind, body, and spirit, and He uses those words interchangeably. Sometimes you talk about the heart, it really is talking about the mind, but
Yeah,
uh, we function as a unit, and you can't.
absolutely.
And I always say in my presentation, God wants to heal us in the way He designed us. He don't just want to heal our physical body. You're connected with your head. Gotta
Hmm.
work. You got to also be able to understand what's going on in your body, and you can't do that if you don't connect your head to your body.
This has been such a rewarding conversation. This
I
has
get
been
to talking, and I think I just
this has been so exciting, and I'm so happy that you have been our first guest to talk about this. We are going to explore this on so many other levels. But I am so happy to have had the opportunity to chat with you this
ah,
afternoon because you are a wealth of information and you are a wise, wonderfully beautiful woman, brilliant mind, and I am so happy we got a chance to chat. So I'm going to leave you with one last question, right? Because we're coming up on time and I'm trying to be mindful of time, but I really could talk to you longer.
mm.
When was the last time you said, whoa, I can't believe that?
I think when I discovered the complexity and the functionality of the heart, I think that is when I just thought how amazing how we are created. I mean,
Mm,
how unique. And the more I dig and learn, there's an infinite creator that it designed us, and there's no one we're not there's no one else like us.
absolutely.
We have our own fingerprint. There's no other fingerprint. I mean, we've got
Yep. Yep.
billions of people,
Yep.
and just that whole the uniqueness of the human heart. And God only speaks to the heart.
Mm, mm.
He only changes the heart. So the heart is so important, and it's so much to learn about the human heart, and also the human mind and how it interacts with the heart.
Thank you
Because,
for that.
in women, we have this intuition that men don't have,
That's right.
you know,
That's right.
and God made it that way because we need each other.
Absolutely.
But
That's so great.
yeah,
So
so
great.
I think when I fully understood that uniqueness of the human heart, which encompasses the heart is the totality of who we are.
Yes.
And I have in my book, I don't know if God gave it to me, I read it somewhere, I think I took credit for it because I Googled it and I couldn't find anybody that said it, but who you are and everything that you do flows from the condition of your heart.
Absolutely.
Everything.
Right, because that's what heads to that's what leads to the mind for you to make the decisions or
Absolutely.
not, for you to act out or not, right?
And
Yeah,
what you do is
heavy.
it's in the heart. Whatever
Yeah,
you
it's in the
do,
heart.
it comes from that heart. So I think the God gave it to me. I Googled it, I couldn't find it anywhere, so I took credit for it. So
Tell us your website.
it's my name, Barbara Gentry Pugh, and Barbara is spelled
Like
Barbra
Barbara Streisand.
yeah,
Okay.
GENTRYPUGH.com. So
We'll definitely make sure that we connect and let everybody know how to find you. But
yeah,
you have been a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to chat and to dig into this space called Art in June
I
and
love
Delicacies of Society. And I am happy to have had the pleasure to spend with you this Friday afternoon. Uh, I think we'll see you again.
well, I want to thank you, June, because I've seen you on video. You never know until you connect with that person. So it's been wonderful, and thank you so much for inviting me to.
No, thank
Yeah,
you. Thank you.
yeah,
We have a lot of work to do, but I am very optimistic that there are people out here doing good work
yes.
like yourself, and that all is not lost. So I'm very happy to hear that. So
Well,
thank you.
thank you again.
All right, have a good
And
one.